And just like that, we are back with chapter 41 of the universe. According to Mugsy, I am Mugsy, the creator. Today is Monday, July 29th, 2024, chapter 41. We are talking current events, culture, and consciousness. And today, in exactly that order. Oh, it just started raining. What a beautiful, every once in a while, just having a nice day of rain to break up that I hope you guys are enjoying your summer. I hope you guys are enjoying as much of it as you possibly can before this summer takes off into the chaotic nature that we knew it was going to take on. Why don't we get into the first with the current events? Now, the last time that I checked in on you guys, we had an alleged assassination of Donald Trump. And today, it is almost as if that never happened. Almost as if that never happened at all. I would like to pat myself on the back. Can we take a few seconds, everybody, and just say Muggsy got it right? You're going to have to get used to saying that because I have been right quite a bit during this election cycle, and I am not a politician. I am not a political analyst. I don't even enjoy knowing what these politicians do on a day-to-day basis. But if you want to understand reality, if you want to understand the present, if you want to start predicting the future, you need to pay a little bit of attention to the political theater that is going on. That is how we were so easily able to discern that in the Republican candidacy, the only path was Donald Trump. Nikki Haley was a joke. Same thing with Ron DeSantis. Vivek Ramaswamy turned out to be more of an ally of Trump than really an adversary. And at the same time, during the Democratic side of the election, we made one prediction here. Joe Biden was not going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party in the 2024 election. We knew that was going to be the case. Maybe we didn't know exactly how it was going to fall apart, but why? Why did we not know those exact things and how the Democratic Party was going to fall apart? Because we don't really know who's in charge. And that should be a dead giveaway. But oh, after really enjoying how correct we've had the last 6 months, what is it, July? Almost August? Yeah, about 6 months. This thing started in December, January, right? We knew we had to start this then because we needed some credibility. We needed a leg to stand on as we predict the rest of this thing. And it's just what I do. Okay, but since the last time that we talked, after we had this nice pat on the back, what has happened? The reason that we wanted to create this dialogue was to explain the things that were happening to people. So after the Trump assassination, we had a president who basically quiet quit on the country and his party. There was a coup, right? Because he said he was fine to be the president. And then all of a sudden there was private pressure put on him and he stepped down. All right. That is also known as a coup d'etat. And that is exactly how we would be painting that picture if this was happening in Venezuela, Bolivia, or any other country in the world except for the United States of America. What else happened? And Kamala Harris is now running the presidency from inside the White House, running for president from inside the White House, more or less. The candidate that nobody wanted, the candidate that nobody asked for, is now the candidate that we are all thrust with because it's not an election, it's a selection. I'm sure you've heard that from political pundits all over the internet nowadays. And they are saying that because it is exactly the truth. The only thing that's wrong about that statement is if you inherently believe that the Republican Party is any different. They're two sides of the exact same coin. Jesus Christ. Let's start talking about it today, though. So, where did this Trump assassination go? How did that so quickly sweep the nation, turn half of the political backing from the private sector, maybe more than half, swing that towards Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden it be washed away by the legacy media. I haven't seen or heard reports of anything. What happened? What happened on that roof? I did see some videos of police standing on the roof after the shooting, the same sloped roof that they said they couldn't put a sniper on. Why did this leave so quickly? Where is this kid's parents? This Matthew Crooks character? Is this crazy or what? I wonder if the audio is picking up the ice cream man. Just doing a podcast here. No worries. Yep. Definitely don't want. It's raining. Try somewhere else, bud. But this Matthew Crooks character, it seems like he came out of nowhere, was removed very easily, and seemingly we have one more shooter who was taken out almost immediately after the accident. A rogue one-man operation who just found a way to get past all of the security. I mean, the Secret Service, the director of the Secret Service had to step down over this, which is a big deal because she is a character who is in the deep state for the last 30 years. And if you look at the evolution of that Secret Service administrator who has now stepped down, which Tim Dillon did a great job of capturing in his most recent podcast, the seeming joy in her eyes in her youth as she was starting out, and to where she is today after having to step down and owning what can only be assumed as a much larger plot that has gone awry behind the scenes. Something went on there. I do not know when and if we are going to know exactly what happened, but it has the fingerprints and the hallmarks of all the other January 6th. How about the pipeline that blew up in the Mediterranean pipeline? We've seen all these things before. So really the only surprise is how quickly they've been able to brush it under the rug, but I don't know what that could have been. I don't know if that was a stunt, if it was some real deep state stuff, but there was a water tower. I mean, not having, we covered it, right? We covered it. There's so many questions, so many red flags. And then seemingly from there, the president of the United States didn't even hold a press conference for a week. He tweeted about it. And then we quietly heard behind the scenes that he did not want to step down from the presidency. He held a meeting with his family. Everybody agreed he could do it, continue to do the job. And then pressure was put on from outside forces where he seemingly came to the conclusion on his own that he was no longer fit for the presidency. And in what only looked like a hostage video that was released to the public, it is starting to seem less and less like the United States president really matters that much. It's kind of a team game, but that is counter to the same narrative that they are pushing against Donald Trump, which is if he wins, that is the end of democracy forever. How can, on one hand, Matt Taibbi and Walter Kern captured this point perfectly in America This Week with the two of them? But how can, on one hand, the legacy media be telling you that if Donald Trump wins an election, that is the end of democracy for all, when on the same hand, in the same breath, they are saying, don't worry about Joe Biden. Yes, he has stepped down. Yes, he is not fit to be a candidate for the next 4 years, but everything that's going on right now, no, we got this. All right, our team of people are managing the decisions that need to be made. Don't worry about who's doing it, American public. That is really where it's so obvious to everybody now. The game's over, right? The sham is up. You can no longer hold both of those truths to be self-evident. What else happened? So that's a coup for everybody out there who doesn't understand how coups work. When a bunch of people, whether they are people in Congress like Nancy Pelosi, whether they are business leaders like the private equity guy from Harvard there, um, whether they are friends and family, private members of society, when they put pressure on someone who is duly elected by the United States people to be the president of the United States, serve as a representative of the entire executive branch. And outside people come in and say, you're actually too old for this. Maybe you should think about stepping down. That's a coup d'etat. It was just super easy because they're all on the same team. It doesn't matter who the person is that is in charge of this amorphous blob of corruption, right? That's what these Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden are, just front-facing assets of much deeper political corruption, representing families and institutions and private interests that span the globe and industries you could never even imagine. That's how this all works. Why is this so evident to everybody now? Oh my God. Why isn't it more evident to everybody now? So these institutions that are really pulling the strings, have come up with this idea that Kamala Harris is really the best we have right now. And even Obama, probably the person really pulling the strings behind the scenes in the political Washington deep state, was hesitant to give his Midas touch to the Kamala campaign because she has been utilized as such a cultural football wherever she has been needed, right? She was an Indian candidate when they needed diversity from Asian America. She was a black candidate when they needed the black vote. She's been the female candidate when they've needed to prop up women. Her record as DA of California stands on its own. She put more black men in prison as free labor than anybody else. And it's disturbing when you start to look in to some of the details of how she ran that state as district attorney. It's even more disturbing when you start hearing the private stories of how she spends her private time. And just let's take all of that and let's just put it aside for one moment. Let's take all of it. Let's pretend for one moment that she's the perfect political candidate. All of her policies are the best that could possibly ever have been presented for the American people. And let's just talk about the fact that they removed two 80-something-year-olds, right? Or they want to promote a younger 60-year-old woman as a portrait of youth, guiding us into a new generation of America without any ties to it, right? Because while the Democratic Party may not be able to define what is a woman and what is a man, a female that didn't have any kids that is going to guide a nation full of childbearing parents, right? How do you have any ties to the future if you have no connection to it, even in your personal life? It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know how they can sell it. Now, they may not be selling. That is the reality that maybe a lot of people haven't woken up to, but that may be the last trick in their bag. This is a little speculative, but they may not be selling it. They may be telling you, okay? Because they still hold the executive branch of the White House. Make no mistake about it. There was a peaceful transfer of power during the last election. No matter how they would like to sell it to you, there doesn't have to be this time around, and that is an option for the Biden White House. And I don't think anybody's putting that on the table. But that is literally, did I miss anything? That was 1 week ago, basically, a week and a half maybe. These events are happening with a higher frequency, faster and faster, and they are getting swept under the rug quicker and quicker. They want you to remember littler and littler of what happened the previous day. This moment has really been characterized in whoever is trying to really steal the reins of power for the next 4 years, and that's becoming evident, and it's no longer a good and bad type thing. We really need to re-examine how politics works in this country if we want any hope for change in America. And this is not unique to the American people. 40-something% of the world this year is holding elections for their executive branch, whatever you want to call that, parliament, president, whoever, prime minister, however they hold up. So the whole world is in many ways on the same page, and that is perhaps no better represented than in the 2024 Olympics. I can't believe we're still doing this. Oh, honestly, I cannot believe the Olympics are still a thing. How much worldwide corruption do we need? What was the last one? I don't even remember. That's how little importance there was in the during the COVID era of these celebrations of athleticism, which is really turned into this clashing of cultures, right? And this opportunity to just rob whatever country is stupid enough to host the event. Los Angeles in 2028 being the next example. Let's make a few predictions here of what we're going to read in the paper. I remember Rio de Janeiro when they were swimming in shit. You think that's going to happen in this French Olympics as they try and do the swimming in the river of France? Now, most of you have no idea what has been happening in Paris, in France over the last few years, but there have been social revolutions happening. Immigration, if you think it's bad in the United States of America, it's 100 times worse in France. And they decided to have the Olympics. So if you like walking down the street to get your baguette, now they are taking over your entire streets and making so that they can welcome in a world into your city, make you walk 30 miles around your city to get back to your normal bakery. And we always hear the same complaints about the food, right? The food at the Olympics for the athletes is cringe. They don't even have peanut butter and jelly. It's gross. It's disgusting. These videos are all over TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all of it. Have we not gone through this? Did we not do this in Sochi? Did we not do this in the UK? Oh, I'm just so tired of it. I'm just so tired. It's over and over and over again. Now, this year was particularly unique because I don't know what you want to call it. The theme for this year's Olympics basically is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It has been culturally moving in that direction, perhaps in South Korea. I remember South Korea, there were a couple, it was kind of like a step back a little bit from this cultural wokeness that seems to be an East versus West clash in the world. By these opening ceremonies in Paris where they had satanic rituals, a representation, a recreation of the Last Supper, kind of spitting in the eye of Christianity with an LGBTQ kind of host, a bearded woman, things of that nature. Now, I'm not a particularly religious person, so spitting in the eye of Christianity for me doesn't offend me per se. I understand that if this wants to be a celebration of the world, maybe targeting a couple religions is not the best way to kick off a celebration, be that Christians, Jews, Muslims, whomever. I understand that there were some ties to the horses being ridden in on as the angel of death. um, these coupled with the knowledge that CERN in Switzerland has done several satanic and occultish rituals at the Hadron Particle Collider, which coincided with some other world and Olympic events, as well as some astrological events. So this is not anything new. Perhaps it's new to the world, but again, I'm not religious. I'm not a particularly religious person. But if you spit in the eye of God on a Monday, it is quite interesting when you lose all electricity to your city on a Tuesday. Almost 24 hours later, the city is plunged into darkness. That is just an interesting happenstance. Now, maybe some quantum physicists will say that was made to happen. Maybe that's why they used to do rain dances. The Native Americans used to do rain dances on the plains. Because if you understand enough of what you're doing, you can bring this darkness upon us. And if that is the case, don't you think we should be fighting against it? And perhaps that's the reason why the Olympics, at least in the United States, are getting absolutely no viewership, in terms of ratings. If ratings are even a measure of viewership anymore, I don't even know if that's really a measure. Because really the measure of what's going on in the world is whatever bubble you are sitting inside. And I try and interweave the important narratives of each bubble through so that you can see it in between the current events, the culture, and the consciousness. That's what this podcast is, and that's why you're here. But some things we should be starting to notice collectively, all right? Because that's what this section is. That's the culture. The Olympics is maybe no greater example of our collective culture as a world, or at least it is supposed to be. So for us to have allowed it to become this corrupt institution that basically goes from country to country robbing them via loans, and the Olympic Bank is tied to the IMF, the Intermonetary Fund, the Global World Bank. That's how all of these loans get pushed through. I am so tired of doing this same discussion, this same lecture, this same rant every 2 years, right? Because that's when we have to review all of these loans and they pick these places. Boston was one of them. Thank God. This was supposed to be in Boston. Now, today, if you asked if we want the Olympics, I don't know if we're smart enough to say no. But 10 years ago, when they tried to push this shit down our throat, we were. I was proud of this city in that moment to recognize that, we're not going to get ripped off like LA is going to in 2028. And Paris was the one they decided to go with. So Paris suffers the wrath of what it is like to have an Olympics in your city. Anyone in France right now will tell you they're staying away from Paris. Everyone's on the south of France right now. Wine country. Why put up with that? These are the games for you. This is the control of your life. Turn on that remote. Choose the Olympics. Let that become your control. All right? Let the remote control you. That's what I'm trying to explain. That's what this all is. This is all control over you, manipulating your mind into accepting this as some sort of thing that's okay. No, we don't celebrate that. I don't know. Not in Boston. Not 10 years ago. We're not dealing with that. You're not ripping us off. So I don't want to contribute to it in any way, shape, or form. And what athletes do we have to celebrate anymore? Listen to the athletes. Talk about their experience. CI Alex Cooper had a podcast with one of the gymnasts from the Boston area, Newton North, I believe, Newton Wellesley, somewhere around there. Young gymnast. Oh man, I remember her from the 2008 and 2012 Olympics. Oh man, you'll have to go check it out. She was on Alex Cooper's podcast. But it was a very disturbing conversation that was supposed to be an uplifting celebration of the Olympic culture. And particularly because this gymnast was one of the most outspoken gymnasts in terms of the, I believe it was Minnesota case against the gymnast being molested as children. It was disturbing to hear her childhood and how it was dealt with. I'm sorry to laugh, right? I'm sorry. But if you listen to that program, it is not a celebration of anything. And how can we spend any of our time celebrating these institutions? I will tell you, when I have children, I will not allow them to participate in any of these Olympic anything, training programs, no matter what sport, no matter how much you like it, if it is not your passion and you don't love it enough to do it alone and with your friends, you don't need these adults putting this pressure on you. Children don't understand how to see the world. They are receiving subconscious, all right, from the adults around them, teaching them. And if we place that importance on these Olympics, then we are willing to accept crazy norms, right? Putting our children in rooms with these adults that we don't really know for extended periods of time on a day-to-day basis is dangerous for them. It just is. And if we haven't learned that from the female gymnasts in this country, the United States of America, in the past 10 years, then what have we learned? Nobody's buying ice cream today, buddy. Come on. We're podcasting. We're talking about child molestation, and you're trying to sell ice cream, probably trying to molest some children. I hope that's not the case. Oh, yes. So that's the culture. That's the Olympics. And it's great to see that so much of the social media landscape is talking about how crazy and ridiculous that opening ceremony was. How ridiculous it was that they lost power, and how maybe there is some connections here. Again, if you're religious, don't let me be the one to stop you. Don't let me be the one to stop you. If you're religious, believe whatever you want to fucking believe. And if you're not religious, maybe just sit back and connect some dots and see where we are being led. Diversity, equity, inclusion, this wokeness. It is a movement with communist ties. Equity versus equality is quite an interesting discussion, because in order to make everybody equal, you got to take a lot away from a lot of people. All right. And that's what this DEI really represents. And if you haven't noticed, society is not doing great culturally. They're not accepting all of the things that is being pressed upon us, right? We can't even take care of ourselves. And that's what it seems like the response is on the internet. And that's a very positive response. It means that people have the freedom, or feel that they have the freedom, to speak freely on the internet. That is something that has changed completely from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, the days of COVID, where Donald Trump was being censored from the internet, uniformly being kicked off all social media platforms. All right. And Donald Trump just being the first. We can even predate Donald Trump, and we can say Alex Jones, who has been right about a hell of a lot more than he's been wrong about, for everything that's happened, all of the tragedies that have occurred in the last 4 years. Alex Jones is the only one that has to pay $1 billion in reparations, right? How about Pfizer? Pfizer got to pay anything? Nope. How about the bankers with all this inflation? How about all the banks that have gone up? They have to pay any money? Nothing. So think about that. All right? Think about that. Think about how much the world has changed. People feel comfortable now to have these conversations because they recognize their neighbors are their friends, not their enemies. And that is the progress we are making. But it is so easy to have your consciousness get trapped in all of this supposed negativity because you don't understand exactly what's going on in your life. Despite all of the things that I listed, a coup that occurred in this country, probably without your knowledge, the Secret Service director stepping down, all of these, an attempted assassination at a presidential candidate, the stepping down of another presidential candidate, the rise of Kamala Harris without anyone ever casting a vote for her. Despite all of these things happening, what has changed in your life? Nothing yet. Nothing. That's important to remember because your consciousness is trying to be sucked into a negative direction. And that's a perfect transition into the time period of this podcast, the consciousness. I want to talk to you guys about time because we are experiencing time sped up, right? It's like someone hit fast forward, certainly on politics, certainly on culture, certainly on the economy, right? Everything is happening super fast. There was an attempted assassination of a former American president, and it's not even in the news, and we don't know a goddamn thing about what happened because so many other events happened in that same week. This is the compounding of technology as it increases over time. Information is now more readily available than it ever has been. And because of this, we are reaching new conclusions faster and faster. And my guess is what we will find out years from now is AI was turned on a few years before they actually told us. So AI might be active right now. And if you listen to a lot of the mediums and psychics and spiritual people that are having conversations seemingly beyond this current physical realm of three-dimensional space. Did you like that? You like how I just glossed over taking us into the consciousness aspect of this? And we're talking spiritual now. I think it will be revealed that this was a spiritual war because it is a war of the consciousness. It is a war of light and darkness, shadows and reflections. Don't notice all of the things in front of your face and continue in this direction because we are making progress. That is what they want you to believe. Where is the progress? Sit down with yourself and have an honest conversation. All of the people you believe are working on any one thing. Take your pick: cancer research, waterways, high-speed rail systems, going to Mars, nuclear energy, renewable energy, all of the progress that they say they are making in all of these different fields. Why don't you look into any one of them and tell me we've made progress? How about your cell phone? How about the internet? Okay, the internet was a big one. When was that invented? The 70s? Smartphones. Just because you didn't get an iPhone until 2007 doesn't mean smartphones weren't here in the early 2000s. 25 years of smartphones. What direction has that taken us into? Is this progress? Is this the progress that we want to move into? And let me contrast that with the progress you've seen in the last 6 months. All right? Just the last 6 months with this broadcast, this universe according to Mugsy. Chapter 1 through 36. Take a look at the progress that was made. That was someone coming out of an entire career that they decided they didn't want to deal with anymore because there was no progress being made. And look at how much coherence there is in this broadcast, this podcast, this conversation, this discussion, which was supposed to be discussion with viewers, or maybe an interview podcast where we get to have this conversation with somebody else who has an interesting perspective, but we couldn't even get to that point. The first 36 chapters of this had to be narrowing down exactly how we were going to approach this. Current events, culture, and consciousness. We're not going to dive in too much into any one of those three fields because there are people out there doing it better than I am, and I will point you in those directions. If you want to watch a 3-hour political broadcast, I will point you in the direction of 3-hour political broadcasts. If you want to watch a discussion between two brilliant people on the culture of this country or this world and how it's evolving, I will point you in the direction of somebody having that discussion. And same thing with consciousness. You want to see what it's like to watch somebody have a 2-hour conversation with spirits from beyond the grave? I'll point you in the direction of that. But my job is to unify all three of those and show you how they all play an aspect in your life and how they all work interchangeably and how this is all really one conversation about the same thing, our consciousness, and taking it back. Because someone has been in control of the narrative, someone has been pushing us in directions, us society, that maybe we wanted to go into, maybe we didn't. Regardless, time to start taking some inventory of where we're at now and start noticing some of the trends that are happening and start changing the patterns within ourselves so that new patterns will evolve and manifest through us, and they will integrate themselves into the culture, into the society, and into the current events, because current events are downstream from culture and culture is downstream from consciousness. Who you are has a massive effect on the rest of the world, whether you know it or not. And while you do not have control over any one thing, you affect everything. And I guarantee you that. That is quantum mechanics. That is quantum physics. That is the consciousness. That is the conversation we are having every week here on the universe, according to Mugsy. I am here to help you understand it, because that is the most important thing I can be doing with my life right now. Guaranteed. I see all the synchronicities in my life. I see how it's all lining up perfectly. I told you guys in the middle of the summer, I have no money. Took screenshots, $100 in my bank account. Now I'm flush. It's not a worry. Okay, guys? I'm not worried about anything. I have loved the Breakout Consciousness Diary. Going out to Breakout every day. I cannot stand Instagram. I hate being a producer. That's my job. That's what I have to do to get this out to you guys. But this conversation, this part, this right here, explaining to you, hopefully answering your questions if you have any. That's the part that I love. That's the part that I do for free. But you guys got to pay me if you want me to keep clipping this and putting it out and being a producer, all right? And if you're out there, why don't you do whatever it is everybody else is telling you to do? I don't really know how it works, and I don't want to figure it out. I hope you guys find me in some crazy, unique experience. And it is the synchronicity that exactly you were looking for in your life. And I hope that we are tied together in the quantum world in that way, in some sort of relationship that doesn't fucking make sense, but is nonetheless 100% real between me and you. That's what I'm trying to create. It's a relationship, right? It's a friend. It's a new friend you didn't know existed until 6 months ago when I said, hey, let's have a dick measuring contest. And let's make that dick measuring contest every decision we've ever made in our life and where it's gotten us to and everything we've learned from it. And let's start comparing. Let's start comparing, because I am incredibly proud of every decision I've made in my life to get me here in this fucking garage, explaining this shit to you for fun, for fucking free for now. I am nuts. I am crazier than every person you've ever met in your goddamn life. And perhaps that's exactly the person that you needed to interact with. Maybe that's the person you should be following. Because the way things are going now, it ain't getting us anywhere. Maybe a crazy person can help make your life a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit happier, understanding this bullshit. Okay, so we'll have another story time. I got plenty of stories for you. We'll have plenty of rants, and we will start having some interesting discussions with some interesting people and the perspectives that they have on the world. Perhaps there is someone out there that knows more than me, but we're never going to know until we start bumping into them. So maybe send this to them. All right. So like, subscribe, send it around, do whatever it is that you normally do with all the other assholes out there that are trying to steal your time and energy, because I'm really only doing this for you. If you guys don't want me out here, I don't need to be doing it. But take back your consciousness, guys. I will check in on you again, maybe this week, sometime soon. I got a lot going on here. Um, take back your consciousness. I love you. I'm out.